Hey everyone, this is Rebecca Bullen again with another miracle story. So this is a story about Easton, one of our boys who was brought to us with needing much surgery, and we brought him to Kampala very often for surgery. He has two different problems. One of them was he was pushed into a fire when he was young by his grandmother and his mom who were fighting, and so it burned his foot so he couldn't walk straight because his big toe ended up being on the top of his foot instead of where it was. So at first I sent him to Kampala for that problem, and they did the surgery for that. It was very interesting because I didn't know where to take him. I didn't know anything about that. But one of the people that were working for me at the time said, "Oh, I know this hospital that Bill used to take boys to get surgeries, so maybe we can go there." So I said, okay, fine. And I didn't know about MAF, and they weren't flying at the time anyways because of COVID. And we couldn't take a regular bus because of COVID. So we ended up having to take a small taxi because I didn't have any friends that could drive me in their vehicles at the time. So early in the morning, like 4 a.m, we went to the bus park and we got into the vehicle. Well, I'm trying to get Easton into the vehicle and he starts screaming, bloody murder, crying. And I realized this is his very first time in a vehicle. So I comforted him. I told him, it's fine. Don't worry about it. And I didn't have Sylvia at the time. So I was trying to talk to this kid without me being able to speak Karamojong. And I was like, well, we're going to just have to figure it out. So I calmed him down, got him some candy or something, and he calmed down. So we drove to Kampala and we got a hotel, but we actually went directly to the hospital, which is the first miracle. The hospital actually was still open, even though we drove all day and we finally got there. The hospital was still open, and the doctors were still available to see him, even though it was like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, which is very rare. So they saw him right away, and they told me what we needed to do. We need to bring him back for surgery at the appointed time and all that. So we get on the bus the next morning, and we spend the night in Kampala. We go back home, and that one we were able to get an actual bus, so it was much easier for Easton. And we get home, and later on, I send one of my older boys to Kampala with the boy Easton to have his surgery. And as the doctors are doing that surgery, they find a serious problem he had, and they call me and explain the whole thing to me. They're like, he needs this surgery it's way more important than the surgery on his foot. You need to do this right away. And that surgery was very complicated. So they scheduled that surgery. I went back with him later, a couple months later, after COVID was lifted and all that. And I asked about how they were going to do it and all that. And they got it all lined up, and that was the first time I sent Sylvia to the hospital with him, but they canceled the surgery. They said, no, we can't do it. At first they said the boy had malaria, so they couldn't do it, so they sent him home. And then the next time I drove it down there with Sylvia and him to the hospital myself, and they said, oh, he has the flu, we can't do it. And I'm like, seriously, people? So the third time I sent him back to that hospital, they had another excuse why they couldn't do it. I got tired. I was like, no, they're not going to do it. I need to find a different hospital. So I heard about the capital city's main government hospital that was for sure going to be able to do it. Took him to that one. So this is like the 5th time for me personally to be in Kampala with this boy. I took him to that hospital, and they actually make this story more crazy and complicated. I got on the bus with him and Sylvia. We were halfway. Well, we were just leaving Moroto when I realized I had left important documents explaining the problem with him at home. So I had to jump out of the bus, got a motorcycle. They took me back to my house. I got the documents, and I had the Land Cruiser at that time. So I just called a driver I knew and said, "Hey, I need you to take me to Kampala right now, because we already have an appointment with the hospital, and we need to do this right now." And I forgot some documents. So he came and he helped me, and we drove there, and we met up with Sylvia because I left her on the bus. We met up with Sylvia, and we were able to go to the hospital. They said, you need to give him hormone injections at first before we can do the surgery. So give him the hormone injections first and do these very complicated, very expensive tests first, and then we will do the surgery. So I got the tests done, and I figured out a way to have Pastor Michael, my friend, send me the hormone injections in a cooler to come to Moroto, and I found a doctor there in Moroto that was willing to give him the injections. So we gave him the injections for the allotted time. We got the other complicated tests done, and we took him back to the hospital, and they said, okay, we'll just call you when we're ready. I waited a year and they never called me. So I'm like, okay, this boy the original doctors who never actually did the surgery told me that has to be done before he hits puberty because of the hormones and stuff. So I said, okay, let me see if I can find a different hospital. So I asked one of my Mzungu or white friends, what they say here, is there any hospital better off than this government hospital or this hospital? And they said, yeah, there's a Mzungu hospital, or a hospital ran by white people. It's going to be expensive. And I said, okay, well, that's better than all this runaround they've given me. So I didn't go to that hospital myself. I just sent Sylvia, because at that point she was so used to doing all this work for me. She understood how to do it. So I sent her to that hospital with Easton, and they were able to do the surgery right away, and it was so amazing. So, but they had to do 2 surgeries for him. They did the first one right away, and then this last year in November, I think, or October, they finally finished his last surgery for that. So praise God, the kid just finally, after all this work, got his surgery done, and he still needs one more surgery on his foot. And this year I'm gonna try to get that done, but then he'll finally be well and whole and be able to have a normal life. And I just wanted to tell you the story because it's so interesting that all those steps, how God helped us, even though it was complicated and people didn't want to do their jobs right and all this, he still helped us. And we had the money to do the more expensive surgery. God blessed us with the money we needed and everything. So praise God for that. Thank you for listening to the story. I love y'all.